Good morning, my friends. Welcome to this episode of Happiness After Codependency. I'm Marshall Berkshire, and I'm your guide back to living, loving, and knowing who you are after codependency and narcissistic abuse. I help you discover freedom from codependency so that you can live a life that you want to live. That's my big goal for you. All right, so today's episode is episode number 9 of the How to Know Yourself series. Today we're going to be talking about your wants matter, and here's why they matter. So before we get started with that, I'm going to get this shared out to the community here on the internet. The community is where you can find support, guidance, shelter, tools, and assistance in your journey and coming back to who you are, getting yourself back from that narcissistic abuse and liberating yourself from that codependency so you can be happy again in your world. The link is above on Facebook. It's below on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to click the button that gets this shared out to the community here real quick. There we go. Also, if you're on the podcast, welcome. If you want to listen to these episodes on your favorite podcast app, I am found on Google, Apple, and Spotify. And the link actually to get access to those podcasts is above in the description on Facebook, below on YouTube under the My Podcast link. So you can check that out there as well. All right. So good morning. Good to see you. So your wants matter, and here's why. So in codependency, we tend to ignore our wants. We tend to shame our wants. We tend to make our wants secondary. They are not valuable. They are not useful. A lot of times they're a major source of pain and hurt for us. We don't believe that they have merit, and we believe that they cause problems in our world, especially because they motivate us to do things that we value and that often end up disappointing the people who have been using us in their lives for their benefit. Because usually wants paradoxically create boundaries. They create limits. They create direction and shape in your world. And if someone has been using you for their supply, they've been trying to get you to be something they want you to be, they're going to get pissed off with that. They're going to be upset with that because you're not playing their game anymore. So wants are actually quite important to our well-being and ultimately our happiness because they connect us to our own individual joy. They are an expression of our own brilliance, our own desire to contribute to the world and to experience something in the world. They are one of the primary voices within us because they show up as our yes impulse. They show up as the desire that we have for something and to experience something. So our wants are actually very, very important. And instinctively, people who want to exploit us or use us or control us, they'll typically shame those wants or they'll use them as bait in which to manipulate and control us through. A lot of times, like in the culture I grew up in, wants were shamed because they were seen as counter to a larger narrative or objective established by some external authority that said, hey, you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be that, and anything you want is wrong and bad and evil, that kind of thing. In reality, wants are an expression of our own individuality, our own sovereignty, our own person, our own power. And they really are a guide towards how we impact and interact with the world, how we contribute to each other. Because we look at the world and there's a lot of pain out there. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of suffering in our world right now. And ultimately, that's because we've all been trying to survive something. We've not been cultivating connection that supports each other in achieving larger goals that we each individually and mutually have. So our wants are an inspiration. They're a means to brilliance. Because my point of view is that life is really about play. It's not just about healing and getting through all the serious stuff. It's really about play. I work on my healing, my growth, my person, my being, in order to access play, to access joy, to share it, to create, to experience and do things. That's the motivation there. That's my objective. That's partly why I do this work, because I find joy in it. I find play in doing this because I love systems, I love solutions, I love teaching, and this is a big deal in my world. So think about for a moment, what do you want? What is play for you? What brings you joy? A lot of times we don't have contact with that. A lot of times that's a major struggle for us because we are not in our body. We're not aligned with our value. We're not aligned with our voice or our vision. We're oriented towards other people's points of view, what they want, what they expect, what matters to them. We're absorbed in their yard. And so we internalize their wants. We absorb what they want and think it's our own. And sometimes we confuse our wants with specific kinds of outcomes or things that we think we need in order to get the want to happen. I see this a lot when people work with money. They're like, well, I want money so I can have X. You don't actually want the money. You want whatever X is. And if we actually shift our point of view from, say, money to, acquiring what we want, we find ourselves on a much more clear and direct path to accomplishing that outcome rather than fixating on the how. It's one of our big challenges in the world and in our own personal worlds is focusing more on the outcome we desire rather than just trying to control the how. Because usually if we are pursuing what we want, it'll start to open up. The how will start to fall into place. We'll learn what we need to do in order to get there, and then we can do those things. That's one of the challenges we have here is discerning what we want. And that requires us to be in our body. And this is one of the most powerful attributes of want because it brings us back to ourselves. And if we're back with ourselves, we're no longer in someone else's yard, so we're no longer being influenced by them. We're not externally oriented towards what they want. We're internally oriented towards our world, our voice, our boundaries, our limits, our joy. And that's the beauty of wants. It brings us back home, brings us back to ourselves, gets us in contact with what really matters to us, what brings us alive, and it inspires purpose. That's the cool part of it, is want inspires directions. It inspires focus in our world. It directs our energy. It directs our power, our choices, and our actions in our world. It helps us create an impact in our life that we want to live with. So our wants are not a frivolous thing. They're not something to run from. They're not something to ignore. They're actually something to value, to learn, to get to know them, to get to know how they speak to us in our body, in your body, how they speak to you in somatically, what sensations they bring up, how they present themselves in your imagination, in your mind and thoughts, and how they speak to you in the world when you're out and about. How do they get your attention? This is where you're going to start finding more of that happiness that we're all seeking. It's by being attuned to our wants, to our desires, and then following their lead, allowing them to inspire us, allowing them to connect us to our intuition, to our brilliance, so we can start shaping our world through our choices and actions in a way that produces more of what we want on a regular and consistent basis. This is the importance of our wants. This is why they matter. They bring us home to us. They help us exit codependency entirely. They help us enter self-respect and knowing, loving, and living who we are deeply. And that's the magic of our wants. That's the value and importance of knowing what we want and knowing how to know what we want. That's what I teach you in the Know Yourself strategy by helping you attune to your voice. Because when we're anchored in our innate value, we become very clear about what's ours and what's others. And then we can lean into the big daring risk of wanting something. And we can tune into our internal want sense and follow that and see what it teaches us, see how it inspires us, see how it begins to produce happiness and well-being and fulfillment in our world. Because that's the point, at least in my view, is it inspires play. When we get out there and play, we're going to find out we really like our lives. We like who we are. And we're going to be surrounded by people who share the same things. We're going to have reciprocal connection, relationship, and friendship in our world because we're coming from a really solid foundation of knowing ourselves. That's the power of the Know Yourself strategy. So we're coming up on the closure of enrollment for the live training. We've only got about 5 days left. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. Come join me and I'll teach you how to know what you want, how to discern that voice and follow it so that you can create more happiness in your world. So that's it for today. It's a short training, my friends. Thank you for being here. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. I look forward to seeing you in class this coming Tuesday for the first class of the Know Yourself strategy. If you have not enrolled, click the link above on Facebook, below on YouTube. Check it out. Let me know. Yeah, I mean, if it's out of range price, let me know. We'll work it through. I've done that hundreds of times for people because that's the point. Get you in there. Get you with what you want. So if you've got questions, feel free to ask. Thank you for being here, and I will see you guys in our next episode. Have a great and playful day today. See you later. Bye-bye.